Okay, this is so exciting. Every chance I get to talk to Rythea Lee is interesting, educational, and inspiring. And Rythea and I decided to share this conversation because it's so pertinent and it's going to be so helpful to people who are struggling with addiction. And this idea that giving yourself full reign of foods that are maybe forbidden foods or problem foods or addictive foods in your life, like how do you manage that? We're going to kind of get into that today. How do you cope? Do you restrict? Do you eliminate? Or do you give yourself full permission? I'm going to introduce Rythea really quickly. She is a performing artist, a therapist, a mother, and she has her own YouTube show, Advice from a Loving Bitch. Check it out. It's fantastic. And she's my mentor and friend. And I'm excited. We've been doing a lot of work together, and this came up in our conversation, and we wanted to share it with everybody else.
Thank you. Yay.
Yay. So let's start talking about how we decided to have this conversation.
Okay. Well, we tend to get into the conversation when we talk. We just dive right in. And our work really intersects.
Yeah. So I lately have been talking about addiction, and Rythea just happened to be doing this experiment with a good friend for over a year. Can you tell me about this decision that you two made to stop eating sugar?
It'll be a year in August. Okay. And it's my dear friend, Johanna, all we wanted to do was do 7 days. We were like, let's do 7 days of no sweet on your tongue at all. Nothing sweet, no sweeteners. Not that food is, that's what we discovered, and we'll talk more, that food is really sweet. It all is sweet, but we were like, no sugar, no refined sugar. And we both had different definitions. Like for a while I was like, well, maple syrup is fine with me. And she was like, I don't want anything sweet on my tongue. And that doesn't mean fruit. Fruit it's not part of it. But it's basically no sugar, no refined sugar or
added sugar.
Added sugar, that's right. No added sugar for 7 days. We started with 7 days. And I mean, I don't want to say much about her process, but she's like way into chocolate. So that was a big thing, just getting off chocolate. And for me, I had a whole idea that I don't really eat sugar. And then as I tried to do the 7 days, I realized I was having it in it was in everything that I really didn't think it was. And we couldn't get to 7 days. So it just kept going and going and going. And then we would explore all these ideas about it. Like, why are we doing this? Are we doing this to get thin? Which was we're both completely programmed as females to want to get thinner. We're like, that's not why we're doing it. What were some of the other messed up reasons? Oh, we really didn't want to use control and judgment or self-hatred to stop from eating the sugar. So we tried to keep this whole idea of being very curious and loving and really choosing to find the place where you just choose, not like you can't, but you choose for reasons. So the first 7 days was just to really explore what happened, how did it feel, what emotions come up. Oh, and cravings. The first thing we had to deal with these intense cravings, and then we're both challenging each other to sit with the emotion of the craving, like what's the feeling underneath the craving. And that was so deep. Oh my God. And because I'm a therapist, this is what I'm into, is the early needs, the early attachment issues as a child were really coming up for both of us, the desire to be held, desire to be loved, desire to feel safe, all these deep underlying desires that it feels like the sugar is going to mitigate, fix, and get you away from and satisfy, which never does. And so now it's been almost a year. So now what we tend is we try to do 7 days. Sometimes we both get to 7 days, but rarely can we do it at the same time. So the one person fell off, and then we start again, and then we choose. And then on Christmas, I'm going for full. Also, I don't eat grains really that much because I get really achy in my joints. So I mostly don't eat grains. So that was sort of part of my thing. But I'd be like, okay, on Christmas, I'm going for it. I'm going to eat tons of pie and tons of ice cream. I'm just going to totally go for it. And we'd be like, great, let me know how it was. And then I would just totally go for it. And then she would go for it on different days. And so it's just been a journey. And we have this thing, it's called Voxer. I don't know if you don't know Voxer. It's like a walkie-talkie. So every single day we leave each other messages. Like, you know what I ate today, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, I'm judging my body, blah, blah, blah. We just every single day say what happened. And there's no judgment. There's been times where one of us like, I just had my birthday, and on my birthday I decided to have ice cream, and I haven't had ice cream in so long. And so this was like, it was the most enjoyable, pleasurable experience eating this ice cream cone. I was so present for it. And I didn't feel sick or get high from it or anything. I just like enjoyed it. But then now I can't get off the fucking sugar. Like once I taste it and I get the like hit of whatever it is, now I'm days trying to get back to one day without it. And then we both have been off it for long periods of time to be able to say, how do you feel now that you haven't had refined sugar for a couple months? Do you notice a difference? And really discuss what are the differences that we feel. So I don't know. I could tell about that.
Yeah. This is great because just giving it context, like I have been a nutrition coach for 20 years and been around a lot of people who have done experiments like this. And all the health coaches I know, all the health conscious people, no one can remain sugar-free for any considerable length of time. Like,
I know. But if you can go a couple months, it's like this huge achievement.
I feel like it is this exploration with your relationship to it. And that's what is really exciting. The achievement is also exciting too, but I found that the achievement doesn't affect anything but the achievement.
Well, let me just tell you why I think it's an achievement.
Yeah.
Because when I have been off of sugar for a period of time, my reality really does change.
Mm-hmm.
I stop craving it, and foods start to taste really sweet to me. Like meat tastes so sweet, and sauce, like tomato sauce, like my taste buds completely change, and I start to taste the sweet in regular food. Like fruit is like so sweet to me now. Oh my God. Yeah, the whole sweet part of the taste, the tongue wakes up. So that's one thing. And I stop craving it. Like I've been in groups and like potlucks where like brownies are passing me and cupcakes are and I don't feel anything. Like I don't feel like, ew, get that away. I also don't feel like, oh, I need it. I just feel like, oh, there it is. That's a choice. That's so empowering to me to not feel a slave to it.
Yeah, totally. That was so true for me. Like when I could walk past like the baked goods at the stores and not have any pangs, that felt like freedom.
It feels like a certain kind of freedom.
Yeah, because to need sugar it's like it becomes consuming, and when are you going to get your next fix? And
background all the time, even like so unconsciously.
Yeah.
And the last thing, so I don't forget of what felt like an achievement or feels like an achievement, is I am sleeping so much better. I'm also so much more grounded and clear-headed. Like my brain and Johanna's brain also, we feel like something after a while clears, like a fuzziness. And I guess that's what addiction does. That's what partly like it's always taking a part of your attention, like this sort of clarity. I've also been like extremely psychic lately. I don't know what that has to do with anything. I don't know if that has to do with the sugar or not, but like I like go, oh, this is going to happen. And then things happen. Like I have like my visual, like my vision, my spiritual vision feels really online.
That's so cool. I like how I connected it to addiction, because that is what I hear when people stop drinking alcohol. Their tastes increase. All their senses increase, their sensory experiences, like food tastes better, life feels better, like the sounds are more soothing and enriching. Yeah.
It's dulling. So the alcohol is dulling.
So it does fall into this category of addiction in that sense, where it's dulling our senses, it's numbing us. So when you did it, did you find when you were dealing with cravings? Because I like to deal with cravings on a physiological level. I feel like it's easier than doing kind of what you've been doing, which is, would you consider it willpower to resist a craving?
No, I wouldn't call it that. That feels like a power struggle. Like I hate that. I mean, I know we're supposed to call it that. Saying no, I wouldn't call my willpower. For me, it has to do with curiosity, like being strong enough to be curious about what's coming up. Wow, I'm having a really strong craving. Would I be willing to sit with these feelings and maybe get support or like be with it? And then it's deep. It's really deep. I don't call that willpower, because willpower feels like forcing myself.
So that was kind of the premise you went in with this with Johanna, was that you will not use control. So if you do want sugar, you can eat it.
Yeah, and we both support each other. Be like, great, do whatever you need. We're just like, there's no like really strong line in the sand. It's more about the curiosity. Also, like misogyny and sexism, like patriarchy, like really is a big part of this, because we're really being careful not to be doing this from the dieting perspective at all, because it's so painful and horrible and annihilating. So like, like one person would be like, I don't know, like, oh, I lost a couple of pounds. Now I really want to do it. And the other person being like, that's not why we're doing it. That's misogyny. You're in misogyny right now. I'd be like, oh, fuck, I'm in misogyny, but I feel so good. I feel like I'm winning. There's all that shit. And Johanna's like so gets all of that, so we could call each other out on that.
That's so awesome. To catch that's what breaking free from diet culture is like. We're gonna get hooked and then we're coming back. We're gonna get hooked, and it's like the recovery of diet culture. I've been talking about that word, recovery. It was just in LA and I found some hooks into diet culture, like just being in that environment.
Oh God, right. For yourself?
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about it?
Yeah. So when I travel, I get constipated. I have a harder time having bowel movements, like with the stress of travel, I guess. And there's like this vagus nerve tension that happens, and peristalsis slows down. I'm with my foodie friends and we're eating a lot, and like by the third or fourth day I was like very physically bloated and uncomfortable, and it was like, how can I keep eating when like I haven't eliminated? But I was still getting hungry sometimes. Like when I was physically uncomfortable, it didn't feel like I could eat, but then that would shift, and even if I didn't eliminate, I would get hungry again. And like my friends were kind of like, how could you eat when you haven't shit? And I was like, I don't know, there's just like, there's room, and so I'm still eating, but there was this shame around eating without eliminating. And I was like, that's not really mine. I kind of just trust my body. It will move eventually. And so I had it in retrospect that shame was, it felt bad and it wasn't mine. Yeah, the shame about eating. Like there's right and wrong ways to eat and be hungry. And
well, eating in body size and eating in body image. And food, it's so sad that food and body image are not so fucking...
Well, underlying going to make my body bigger and bigger. All right, so there's this experience going on with you eliminating sugar. What did you notice like sugar was a substitute for?
It feels like comfort and safety. It's like there's a lot of fear that comes up. I have a lot of fear from my whole life, whatever. Like maybe everyone has a lot of fear, but like, so fear comes up, like anxiety, maybe like a level of anxiety or stress, or like, and then there's craving, and it's a craving to like feel better or fix it, or I don't know, it's so intense and it's different all the time. Like sometimes I'm someone who's like spent a lot of time identifying my underlying emotions, which I got like mad, sad, scared, ashamed, and happy. Those are, I'm always being like, what do I feel right now? So there's a lot of grief that I notice if I tune into my craving. There's a lot of grief, and it feels like comfort. There's like a lack of comfort.
So I was curious if you could tell over time doing this experiment, if you could distinguish between the cravings of a physiological need for sugar and glucose or an emotional need and filling the void.
Well, I did notice that Johanna and I both talked about that there were times where we hadn't eaten a meal in time, and then you just eat something shitty. We both had that happen many, many times, especially when you're out in the world. You're traveling or you're out in town and you didn't eat in time, and you start to feel like that low blood sugar feeling, and then you're like, I need a muffin, and then you just get a muffin. And like, yeah, that happened to both of us a lot.
So as like in my world, I would reframe that eating something shitty, and that would be like a diet culture catch. Right. And I would call it eating food because your blood sugar is low.
I love it. So great. I love that. Yeah. You're right. It's not shitty. It's just right. I forgot. Okay.
That's the physiological need. Yeah.
We're trying not to eat sugar. So I guess we would be grabbing something we were trying not to eat,
yeah,
out of desperation, or like you said, a physical blood sugar issue. And then when you're not slowed down, the ability to choose, or if you're like traveling or something like, and there aren't many choices. Oh my God, traveling and trying not to eat sugar is almost impossible. I just had a thought about something, which is that I have this like extensive lifestyle of processing my feelings and my early traumas, getting all the support and processing with friends, and I have a therapist. So I have like this whole baseline support around what might come up if I stop eating sugar or stop acting out in a certain addiction. So I feel like I have all this ground to be able to do this experiment, but I bet you that a lot of people don't. Just like feelings that come up can feel really life-threatening, like the feeling that you need to eat something. It's so primal.
Yeah.
You have to have some serious tools. Like both Johanna and I agree that we've been crying, like sobbing at times, that in a new way, like more crying. Good thing. Most people would think that's a bad thing. Like, yeah, I had a huge sob. It was freaking awesome.
Yeah. So you're like you're accessing more feelings. Feelings are moving through more. And the benefit of that is, even though it's hard in the moment, you're accessing more life.
Yes, I feel more alive. That is so true. I have felt more alive in this last year than ever in my whole life. So I guess that's the achievement part of it, but it's not really achievement. Kind of indicates like an end line somehow. But it's not like that. It's a process. Like, we're going to keep going. Me and Johanna, we're going to keep going.
Well, I like that as an achievement rather than naming 10 days in a row without sugar. I mean, I just find numerically we get a little neurotic about that versus the side effects.
Right. So,
and that's the same in the addiction world. Like, Holly Whitaker is the founder of The Tempest, and she's trying to teach a different paradigm to sobriety, which is like her sobriety started before she had her last drink. And in the 12-step community, sobriety starts like the day of your last drink, and it's about kind of accumulating days and tokens. And she's like, that can really trip us up.
Right, because then you fail.
Right.
And then people get really lost once they fail. They can't get back in.
Yeah, you're starting from zero.
Logical thing of failing.
Yeah, and her whole thing is like, every time you fail, that's part of sobriety. That's part of recovery. The more you fail, the greater chances you have of succeeding. And it increases your chances of abstinence, of avoidance of the substance. So it's okay to include that.
How do you teach? I don't know if the word is teach, but how do you teach about addictions if there's not like this external numbers or like eliminating foods? That's the whole thing you're trying to get away from, with like restricted diets, right?
Yeah, I think a big defining factor is the intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic motivation. Like, I just had this experience of I highly recommend nourishing herbal infusions. That's one of the best ways to remineralize your body, to add nutrition. Like all of the nutrition that we get excited about, the vitamins, the minerals, the microminerals, the essential fatty acids, the amino acids, like nourishing herbal infusions have it all. I was noticing that I wasn't drinking them that often. And it was like, what is that about? Like, I used to be highly motivated by health. I wanted to be healthy. And so I would do whatever it took. And that was fairly easy for me. I was motivated easily by that extrinsic factor of health. And then something happened in my life. Finally, something tragic happened in my life. And health, I couldn't really give a shit about health. Health didn't save me from feeling sad. Health didn't do anything for me in the worst time of my life. Health was not there for me. So plus having that shitty time, I was like more tired. I was more depressed. I didn't have the motivation to take care of myself in the same way. So as I've kind of been recovering from this, I've been finding like, okay, what is intrinsically motivating for me? And I've noticed that I've kind of come full circle. I do like to use a lot of the things that I did originally that made me healthy. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I still care about nutrition. I still care about like eating well. It makes me feel better. And I'm drawn to nourishing herbal infusions in a much different way now. It's not because of the high nutritional content. It's like because of how it makes me feel and the ritual of making the tea. I find more nourishing than almost drinking it.
Really, like you just feel this self-care while you're doing it, like in this.
Yeah, it feels like self-care. It feels like rhythm in my life. It feels like a stability. It does, and it does, similar to exercise, it does regulate a lot of things in my life. Like if I have my herbal infusion, I'm more grounded. I'm more resilient. So there's this term that I learned in the years since this devastating thing that happened, and it's called healthism. It's like just like sexism and racism. Like healthism is like we have to do certain things in order to be healthy. There's a right and a wrong way, and it gets really exclusionary. So I'm kind of like, it's a long answer and I don't even remember the first question.
Food restriction, something about
Yeah. So I do think that when I talk about food elimination, there's foods that trigger certain bodies differently. And I find that rather than saying don't eat those foods, like with this internal motivation, we are less attracted to them. We're not drawn, and it's a personal choice rather than I shouldn't eat that.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what we've been working with. That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
And also you have to experiment with the thing to even know why you're choosing it. You have to go into the sugar and see what this like. You have to come out of it. You have to have a real curiosity and play almost, So it could be
Yeah.
I've been finding it really fun.
And the denial piece with the experimentation, it's like, oh, when I eat that, this happens. There's this meme on social media. It's like, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, and I don't know why I feel that we're not connecting the dots very well.
I just got that. It took a minute. Right, there's such a disconnect. Right, yeah. So I was just thinking that there's a really cool connection between this and talking about my daughter and what I'm doing with my daughter. Like it seems so related.
Cool. Yeah. So this like second part of this, while you've been doing this personal elimination or experimentation with sugar, you've been giving your daughter full permission to eat sugar.
Yes.
For the first time.
So rad. It's so rad. Maybe for most people, probably people all over just let their kids eat tons of sugar, but I've just never been that way. And I'm in this very progressive environment with all these families that do very limited sugar, like all my friends. So that's that's how I always was with Toriel, my daughter. She's 7. So up until about 7, I've always been very restricted with sugar with her.
Can you give some examples? Yeah.
At a little party, you can have one brownie and you can have a piece of cake, but that's it. One of each. Where now she can have as much cake. She can have 7 pieces of cake. She can have 7 brownies. And we go to a potluck. I'm like, eat whatever you want. Have fun. She was never ever allowed to eat candy. Even on Halloween, I would buy healthy organic candy. It had sugar in it, but you can't have any of the chemicals, and we would trade them out, which she found extremely annoying. And now she really does, because now the older you get, the more you just want to fit in and do what everyone else is doing. But what happened is I've started doing something called non-coercive parenting. The whole discussion, we don't have to get into that, but basically it's about seeing your child as an equal. And instead of being authoritarian with them, stepping into something called the collaborative mindset, a collaborative mindset. I'm learning this from a man named Vivek Patel, and I tell you about his website later, but he's my friend, and he's also coaching me, majorly coaching me, because it's one of the hardest things I've ever tried to do, and no one agrees with it, so that's hard.
And no one what?
No one agrees with me. You're not controlling your kid and giving them all the limits. You have to set limits for them. But this whole idea is that for a while with the sugar, I'll just stay on the sugar part because I'm doing it in every area of her life. But just with the sugar part, it's I've been restricting you all your life. I just want you to know, Toriel, we're going to do an experiment. And for a while, you just eat whatever you want. Whatever you want, whatever, and then we'll check in and we see what you think. And it's not permissive because you stay really close and you help her think about what she gets a certain allowance, and she goes to the candy store and she gets all this candy, and that's what she does. And then she was never allowed to eat candy before. She went absolutely berserk on it, crazy. But she started to be ew, this is disgusting. Or oh, I ate that, I have a stomachache. She started to actually have experience of the sugar and the candy. And I talked about, chemicals and high fructose corn syrup. We started to have all discussions about what's in it and why it might make you feel sick and also be faced out and exhausted. And we started a whole actual conversation and discussion about the sugar instead of just the rule. It was always just the rule before. I explains it a little bit, but this is how do you feel? What do you think? We're just actually living it. And she just the other day, she bought a whole big box of those ice cream sandwiches, and she ate the whole entire thing. And in the beginning, it was so hard for me. It was painful. It was really, really hard. I have to text this guy and be like, she just said a whole thing, I'm freaking out, you know, and now she's bouncing off the walls and blah, 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 and now she's cranky and horrible, you know. I was like so freaked out. And but slowly, she is regulating herself. We've only been doing it for like, I don't know, 5 months. But she bought this whole thing of caramels. It was like, I mean, it costs money. That's a hard thing. Okay, we can get into that later. But so she ate half a caramel. She was like, these are disgusting. And she gave them to my house. In the past, what made me start to do this is she was sneaking sugar. That's what made me be like, I don't want to be in this relationship where my kid is sneaking sugar. That's terrible. Like
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Will you say that last sentence again?
Oh, I didn't want to be. She started like kind of stealing sugary candies and stuff, and then going in the bathroom and eating them, hiding them.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh my God, it's not what I want. This is not what I want.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, it's going great. I really feel like she's in a complex relationship with it now, and I'm with her. We talk about it, but I've stopped. You know, like one thing was, you know, people are like, yeah, but she's going to get addicted and then it'll screw up her physiology for the rest of her life. She'll be wired towards the sugar and blah, blah, blah. But I don't think I believe that. The one thing that Vivek said to me is like, you can't keep your kids from all the horrible things in the world. You can't protect them from all of it. And so you have to decide what's more important, like keeping her from eating sugar or being close with her. Because if you start to become the police person, then she has to push you away to get this thing that she wants, that everybody else is doing. So I start to prioritize our closeness and connection over the sugar. I don't know what the sweets are going to do to her physically. Maybe it will be bad. I don't know, but it's more important for me that we're in this together. And I feel so much closer to her. And I'm doing it in a lot of different areas. I feel like our whole relationship is shifting. It's totally amazing. You know,
wow.
She's not seeing me as this thing she has to protect against.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she knows that I'm not eating sugar, and sometimes I do, you know, around her and sometimes I don't. So, like, she knows I'm in, like, a whole thing with it, but I'm not putting it on her. But the other day she goes, I don't want to eat so much sugar because it makes me, what did she say? It makes me act mean. I start acting mean.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty advanced.
Very.
And she also really is limiting herself. She really is, like, she's really not getting candy every week anymore, and she really can go to like a potluck and not binge like crazy. She'll decide for herself. Like this idea that a 7-year-old can self-regulate and listen to her body. That's what he coaches me. Vivek coaches me to say to her, like, you can trust your body. You know what you want. You can listen in. How does that feel? I'm not going to tell you. Like, how does that feel? So that she can actually reference herself instead of reference me.
That's so cool. So do you think like the check-ins that you have are really important to the process for her?
They're essential because it's not neglect. It's like, do whatever you want, you know, and just ignore her. It's like, let's do it together. Like, you go and I'll be here and you can ask me questions. And she's so much more open to my input now because I'm not trying to control her. I'm actually sharing information if she wants it. I was telling her, like, these vegetables, like, these are the things that build your strong bones, and this is how you want it. And the more you eat it, the more you'll like it. And she'll actually listen to me without being like, you know, it's not lecturing me. Like, she's actually open to it because I'm actually not controlling.
Wow. That's so cool because I remember as a young kid, I had this attraction to nutrition. I was really curious, like, oh, I wanted to be healthy. I think we all inherently want to be healthy. So if like there's a certain food that makes me feel better, I was interested. I have to, you know, have a taste for it. And that's what you said, like your taste for meat and tomato, which are, you know, 2 flavors of umami. And I say that like the more nutrition you eat, the more taste you enjoy and the more nutrition you seek. So I imagine, and like you have told me, you also cook a lot of homemade food and you cook for her. And so you are getting a lot of other foods in her diet.
She eats vegetables and fruits all day long, which is really great. But you should know I hate cooking. I don't know if I told you this. It's like,
oh no, I didn't know that.
My nemesis. I hate it so much. That's why when you sent me that text today with the thing about cooking and how hard it is, I was like, it is so hard. I'm not a natural cook. I don't like it. I do it every fucking day. And I'm bored of everything I make and whatever. So it's another story.
Yeah.
It's a great creative joy for me at all.
Mm-hmm. So has watching her change your experiment at all? Would your next experiment be full permission sugar, or do you feel like you're kind of beyond that?
My whole life was full permission sugar. I mean, well, actually, that's interesting. My parents were no sugar growing up. They were really health nuts. And I just went to my friends' houses and binged like crazy. I felt so deprived. But when I got free of their house, I just went crazy on sugar for years and years and years. So it didn't work, until
Because it wasn't really full permission. It wasn't in total.
You mean as a kid?
Yeah, like if there was restriction at home, like there would be.
It was like the worst.
Yeah.
Like all healthy versions of everything. It tasted horrible, Like we weren't allowed to eat. For some reason, we couldn't have dairy for a long time. So I had to eat like this really healthy, horrible, natural cereal with like orange juice. I had like the worst foods ever. I mean, and this brown bread that like hard, and then this like natural peanut butter and natural jelly that had no added sugar. And then I'd be so embarrassed of my lunch, I would throw it out. I mean, it was like the worst of health food, like the worst.
Wow.
So maybe that's why it's so healing for me to stop restricting my daughter. It just feels like such a relief. What was the question?
If your experiment for yourself would be shifting more to how you're doing it with your daughter, or does it feel like, is it influencing you at all?
I just feel like I'm getting closer and closer to the feeling of being able to choose. Like really purely choose without shaming myself, or you should. I'm really getting through the like shoulds and more like, it was so amazing because I was like, oh, okay, on my birthday, I'm just going to like take off all the stops and I'm just going to have whatever the hell I wanted. And I really, really enjoyed it. But I was a little bit like, because sometimes I eat that stuff and I feel really sick. Like sometimes eating sugar makes me feel so sick. And so I was like, is it worth it? Like, I want the yummy in my mouth, but is it worth how sick I'm going to feel after, So, like, and that was it felt so adult and so non-reactive to, like, sit with it and try to decide without this compulsive. That's another thing that me and Johanna, we say, okay, I ate some sugar today, but it didn't feel compulsive. It actually felt fine and tasted great. We also say that, like, oh, I ate the sugar and I felt so compulsive. Like, if I didn't have it, I would, like, die. So we, like, sort of trying to figure out the difference between eating it, how you eat it.
I love that distinction, because the compulsive is what is addictive, the quality of it. And I do believe you can eat sugar and have it not be compulsive. Yeah.
I mean, I've had some glimpse of that, but I feel like if I just went for it, it would become compulsive pretty quickly. Like once I start eating it a lot, it becomes cravings and compulsive again. So I can't imagine going back to just like eating it, but I don't know. It makes me want to mention something important that we talked about before this call, which is people's concern that I will turn my child into an addict. And it just brings up the question of where does addiction come from? Because I don't believe that just because she's eating things that she'll become an addict. I mean, I think that it's much more complex and deep why people become addicted to things. Like I have so much trauma. So all the things I've had to use to be okay. It's like so deeply complex. She doesn't have that, as far as I know. She doesn't have that trauma, so I don't think she's going to be addicted in the same way. But we'll see. I'm learning. My motto is I will fuck it up my way. I will fuck her up my way. I get to fuck my kid up my own way. I'm not going to do it anybody else's way. Like fuck them, fuck everyone else. They can all do it their own way with their own kid.
Yeah, I love that. And the your way just means at least you did it your way, at least.
Well, I mean, I could try to do it. Like I'm such a rebel around mainstream culture. So there's so much pressure to do it the way that, I don't know, everybody else is doing it. You're supposed to punish and reward your kid. Like that's what everybody does. I don't do that. I don't do consequences. Everybody does consequences. So it's like, I get to do it my way. And I'm getting stronger. It's getting easier.
This has been a really enriching conversation, per usual. There's so much more to talk about, but I think what was helpful is there's no one right way, but the full permission and the taking something away are kind of two avenues to the same path. I think you have to have a lot of skills, like you said, to do the taking away method where you're not habituated to dieting, because I think dieting itself can be an addiction.
Yeah. I love that you said that. Healthism. That's an addiction. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
All right. I want to ask you a question when this is done.
Okay.
Should we say goodbye first?
Yeah, let's say goodbye. And let's say where people can find us and
So everything about me is at Rythea.com, and Rythea is spelled Rythea.com. I'm also all over YouTube. If you put in my name, Rythea Lee, Lee is my last name. What else? Advice from a Loving Bitch is the name of my show. It's a 20-episode series about healing self-hatred. Very relevant to what we're talking about.
Thank you so much. And you can find me at marciegoldman.com, MarcieGoldman. And I'm on social media. I love Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for joining us.